in battling the Matrix, I think there are two big mistakes you can make. One is to think that because the other side is wrong, you're right. That is not always true. It'd be nice if it was always true, but it's not. The other mistake you can make is because you are dedicated to the truth and because you're an honest person dedicated to the truth, that doesn't mean you always have the truth, right? Everyone can be wrong, and sometimes you just don't have enough information. Hard as it is to believe, this is even true of me, and I'm on a mission from God. But let's talk honestly about what happened to Tucker Carlson, because I think this is a really important moment. The fact that Fox News fired him is genuinely important. He was the best thing they had. He was the most important thing they had, with the exception of Bret Baier's news show, which is excellent. He was the reason people were watching Fox News, and I'm not even sure how many people watch Bret Baier. He left, their ratings dropped by 2 million people. Don't believe the charts where they compare his Friday show, which is the worst rating time, to weekday shows. They lost about 2 million people. That's 50% at least of their audience. And just to add to the story, Don Lemon was fired, and that cost CNN's ratings also dropped by 50% of their audience. So that's 2,017,000 people who aren't watching cable TV anymore. And obviously, Tucker reached a lot more people after his show was over, when things were spread through the internet, right? Now, if he were not powerful and if he were not doing an important work, the Matrix wouldn't have come after him. AOC and Chuck Schumer wouldn't have said the stuff they said right before he went down, and then AOC came back and said something more after he was fired. It's cut 11.
When you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
We not only have a right to tell Rupert Murdoch and Fox what to do, but an obligation.
Deplatforming works, and it is important. And there you go.
So I don't care about Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is not a moral entity. It's like calling him evil. It's like calling a coyote evil, right? He just eats he's a political animal. He just feeds on whatever is dead. But AOC is a dangerous person. She really is. I mean, I think she's probably one of the most dangerous politicians. She's an ignoramus. She's a fascist. And she has a great rack. And I just think that that's a very dangerous combination going forward. And just the fact that she said these things, Jeremy, the God King of the Daily Wire, if AOC said that about one of us here, he'd raise our salary. Because he would know. If they're going after you, you must be worthwhile. You must be valuable. You must be doing something. So the fact that Fox did not keep Tucker on after that kind of attack, they're literally calling for him to be censored by government decree, right? Just tells you something about Fox News. And I'm not talking about the people or the talent on Fox News. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. That has nothing to do with it. Some of them are worth watching, some of them aren't. I'm talking about the corporate power behind that entity. It's obviously not on a mission. It's obviously not doing missional work like some of us are here, right? So, obviously, when you look at people, you come to trust them or you don't trust them. And I'd like to think that you've seen me, sacrifice audience in order to level with you, in order to tell you what I really think. So I think I've earned your trust. But at the same time, I expect you, obviously, to make I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to miss things. Everybody does this. So I expect you to think for yourself. That's the way we work. But you should now know that Fox News is not entirely on your side. Now, I don't know why Tucker was fired. I mean, Tucker says he doesn't know. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on. If you think you know, you're wrong, right? I mean, you may have guessed right, but you do not know. That we just don't have the information yet. The Murdoch Corporation, speaking through the Wall Street Journal, says it's because that emails that were revealed during the Dominion suit showed him insulting executives with foul language and being, nasty to people in power. There's been speculation that Murdoch wants to sell Fox and doesn't think that the people who could afford to buy Fox would buy it with Tucker there. There's speculation that Murdoch's son, Lachlan, and his whole family, they're tired of being excluded from New York's elite parties, and so they want to strip. That's the Matrix, where you want to be part of the in crowd. So they want to strip the conservatives out of Fox, so they'll get invited to parties in New York, and that would explain that stupid piece they did on America's Newsroom about that kid in California transitioning. Oh, if you don't like that, it's just because it's strange and new. You know, that was that kind of thing. That was a horrible, ugly, stupid piece, and I was embarrassed for them that they did that. So that, you know, kind of tells you that maybe something's happening over at Fox. You know, other things, Vanity Fair said they fired him because of the speech. I'll play a little bit of it where he spoke religiously, and, you know, Rupert Murdoch doesn't like religion. I don't believe that story at all. And then, of course, there are all these totally unsupported charges against him. There's one woman who's saying, oh, he was a frat boy who created a terrible, you know, hostile atmosphere for women, but she then admitted that she never met him. So you know, that stuff is just hit stuff. I don't care about that. But we know this. We do know this. The Matrix hates this guy. I mean, this is the thing we have to say in Tucker's favor, okay? Whatever criticism I make about him, the Matrix hates this guy. The people who hid Hunter Biden's laptop, the people who said Antifa, these thugs who are dedicated to bringing down America, the people who say that police kill black people inordinately, and encourage riots and say riots are good. This country started with violence, so we should have violence now. Those people hate Tucker Carlson. Here is The View reacting to news that Tucker had been fired.
Word has just come down that Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have agreed to part ways. They thank him for his service to the network and hosted a prior contributor. Wave.
Can I ask the audience if they'll help me do something? Come on, folks. Na, 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 na. Na, 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 na. Hey, goodbye.
So that's the media reaction, basically. Brian Stelter, you know, the former CNN media analyst, the man who once missed a deadline during COVID so he could go to bed and have a good cry, proving that a man really can transition into a woman. He wrote a piece for the New York Times, a former newspaper. He said, Fox News, despite having a newsroom with reporters and editors, is primarily a conservative entertainment operation and a Republican Party organ. The news doesn't come first or even second at Fox, and the reporters there know it. Mr. Carlson repeated a story of good versus evil, full of conspiratorial and xenophobic rhetoric every single weeknight. His repetition was his superpower, indoctrinating his fans and inoculating them against the truth. Let's just remember for a minute the deep commitment to reportage and truth that Ms. Stelter and Jake Be Afraid Tapper showed at CNN during the last election, when there was evidence rising that not only that Hunter Biden was running an influence peddling scheme and had been running it for decades, but that his father was part of it. Here's just a brief montage of their in-depth reporting and dedication to truth, cut 9.
It's true that there's no evidence of any wrongdoing by Vice President Biden or that Hunter Biden broke any laws at all.
What it confirms is that Hunter Biden is a person of integrity.
Hunter has done nothing wrong.
I've never read a memoir like this one before. This is Hunter Biden's book, Beautiful Things. It's breathtaking.
There is no evidence of any wrongdoing by either Joe or Hunter Biden.
Thanks, CNN. It's breathtaking. That autobiography is breathtaking. It's breathtaking. You know, at this level, the Matrix doesn't even know it's the Matrix. I mean, I suspect Brian Stelter actually thinks he's an honest woman. But whatever Tucker's flaws, his work was better than that. So here's my take on him professionally. Here's my take on Tucker Carlson professionally. I met Tucker. I've been on a show a couple times, but I don't know him. He repeatedly scooped the Matrix media with big, important stories, okay, repeatedly. While CNN was churning out crap like you just saw, Tucker interviewed Tony Bobolinsky, a Hunter Biden associate, who implicated Joe Biden in Hunter Biden's corrupt schemes, and everything Bobolinsky said has so far been confirmed. Tucker caught the Bank of America sharing private information with the feds so they could arrest January 6 protesters. He got an inside Google email showing them working to increase turnout for Hillary Clinton voters in 2016. Not only did the Matrix media not get these stories, they didn't cover them after Tucker got them, right? Now, sometimes he was wrong. He was wrong about Vladimir Putin. Putin is a bad guy. He is our enemy. But he boldly went against the tide of war on Ukraine, which is an opinion thing because nobody knows what the future is, right? So that's an opinion. So that was a brave, and it's a defensible position that I don't entirely agree with. I partly agree with it. But whether you agree with him or not, he did something that nobody in the Matrix media was going to do. He took on Sidney Powell's claims that Dominion machines were hacked. He demanded that she deliver proof, and she couldn't do it. He risked embarrassing his own network by pointing out that destroying our border was an open plan to brown America. Now, that's what they call him a racist for, but he was quoting them. He was quoting the Democrats. And that just drove me crazy. What a terrible racist Tucker Carlson is, because he says he's paranoid that they're trying to brown America. That's what they said. And all he did was call them out on their plan. And of course, weasels like Brian Stelter accuse him of racism. He interviewed left-wingers all the time if they had something to say. Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald were on his show when they uncovered the truth about the government suppression of speech on Twitter, and when they defended leakers who exposed abuses by the CIA and NSA. Ross Douthat did a piece on Knucklehead Row at the Times where he said that Tucker wasn't always right-wing. He pointed that out. But he said he was just always suspicious. But Ross doesn't take into account the 20 years of establishment failures and lies and abuses that I was talking about before that make suspicion, not paranoia, but constant alertness and suspicion, a perfectly reasonable political position. That used to be the job of the press, being suspicious of the powerful. Now it's not. It is not. And they do not do that job anymore. Now, sometimes Tucker's suspicion, and also probably just the need to have content for 5 days a week. Sometimes that made Tucker get conspiratorial and silly in a bad way. He bought into that UFO story, which I personally suspect was a CIA distraction campaign meant to keep our minds off the fact that they were doing illegal stuff to silence Americans. He had one recent story about the CIA killing Kennedy, which was so poorly sourced that I thought it was just irresponsible. You have to get that story to report that story. His take on January 6th was reactionary in that he reacted to the Democrat nonsense that it was an insurrection, which is nonsense, but he made it look like it was a walk in the park. Personally, I think that January 6th was disgraceful behavior by some Trump supporters, that it was goaded on by the feds, and then, of course, blown out of all proportion by the Democrats, and the people who were in that situation have been totally mistreated. The Democrats are evil authoritarians, but Trump bears a lot of responsibility for January 6th. He put his ego before the Constitution, and I'm sure Trump has never read the Constitution. I think that's something worth considering. Anyway, no one gets it right all the time, and Tucker didn't get it right all the time. The main point is Tucker covered a lot of major stories that the Matrix media didn't only not cover, they buried them, they hid them, they lied about them, they insulted him for covering them, and he took reasonable but outsider positions that absolutely no one in the Matrix media dared to take or even debate. And that made him relevant, and it made him entertaining, and it made him sometimes important. So the most important thing about Tucker, the reason they wanted him gone so badly, is that because he kept his eyes open. He learned. You could watch him learning things. People dismiss this. When public figures change and they learn and they grow and they have different opinions, they did this to Tucker. They would say Tucker just morphed into whatever he thought the audience wanted him to be. He was a bow-tied, William F. Buckley clone when he thought that would work, and then he became a Trumpian-style firebrand. But no, that's not true. And anyone who is good at his job evolves and changes. So yeah, sure, he's looking for audience. We all want to have an audience, but you shouldn't think the same thing at 50 that you thought at 20. If you do, you're an adolescent fool or Bernie Sanders. But I repeat myself. Everybody wants an audience, but he actually kept his eyes open and he changed, right? So Tucker served his audience, but I think he also went through a real awakening. He was on a podcast called Bob and Eric Save America, and he started to talk about things that he felt he got wrong. Cut 3.
I've spent my whole life in the media. My dad was in the media. That is a big part of the revelation that's changed my life is the media are part of the control apparatus. There's no, yeah, I know. Cause you're younger and smarter and you're like, yeah. But what if you're me and you spent your whole life in that world and to look around and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Not only are they part of the problem, but I spent most of my life being part of the problem, defending the Iraq War. I actually did that.
So that is, I think, honest stuff. And that's something that does happen to you when you're in a business. When I first started to make commentary that destroyed my Hollywood career for conservatism, I was just doing it because I had something to say. I wasn't doing it for money. I wasn't getting a lot of money for it. I was getting a lot of money from Hollywood that I lost to say those things because I thought it was important to say it. And I was amazed at how often I bumped into people who weren't serious, who were basically, it was their career. It was what they were doing, what it took to get money, saying what they thought would bring in the most audience, and just, playing the game. I think Tucker woke up to that. He made a speech just before he got fired at the Heritage Foundation, where he started to talk about the landscape of the moment right now. The fact that this isn't really a political moment we're going through. It's not a political landscape. It's a uprising of evil. This is cut 5.
If you have people who are saying, I have an idea, let's castrate the next generation. Let's sexually mutilate children. I'm sorry, that's not a political debate. What? There's nothing to do with politics. What's the outcome we're desiring here? An androgynous population? Is that really what are we arguing for that? I don't think anyone could defend that as a positive outcome. But the weight of the government and a lot of corporate interests are behind that. Well, what is that? Well, it's irrational. If you say, I think abortion is always bad, well, I think sometimes it's necessary, that's a debate I'm familiar with. But if you're telling me that abortion is a positive good, what are you saying? Well, you're arguing for child sacrifice, obviously. It's not about a teen girl gets pregnant and what do we do about that and victims of rape. I get it. Of course I understand that, and I have compassion for everyone involved. But when the Treasury Secretary stands up and says, you know what you can do to help the economy? Get an abortion. Well, that's like an Aztec principle, actually.
See, that sounds so much like me that it obviously must be true. Because if I would have said it, it's obviously true. We're not in the situation that people my age, and Tucker's age, he's younger than me, but still in that cohort, we're not in the situation that we've been in most of our lives. So yeah, that young guy, what was it? What is it called, that podcast called? Full Send Podcast. I gave it the wrong name. Full Send Podcast. And that young guy was going, yeah, I know all this stuff. But yeah, he was born at a different time. He's going to find out stuff that he didn't know later on. But these are the things that people our age are finding out when we start to say, oh, we're not in this time anymore when we're having debates, when our facts are up against their facts. We're having a time when something really bad is happening. Again, I've said this a million times. You can make a debate about abortion that's a compassionate debate. You can have that debate. We're not in that debate. When you're talking about aborting children the day before they're born, that's what all the Democrats support, every damn one of them. That's what they support. You're talking about infanticide. When you're talking about butchering children, you can say, oh, some people are transgender. I get that. That's an interesting conversation. When you're talking about butchering children who do not know what they are, you are evil. You're a bad person who's doing that. And there is no debate because evil people are not prone to arguments. They're not going to give way before arguments. We are dealing with an evil that has risen out of angry, dysfunctional people in our universities. This is where it starts. They are embracing a series of theories that has been generated from 19th century Germany through today. They've embraced the death of God and the infinite mutability of morals. I've talked about this. And they are now advocating for evil. In the wonderful novel by Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov, one of the brothers, the atheist brother, is named Ivan. And Ivan says, this is before Nietzsche ever wrote basically the same thing. Ivan says, if we don't believe in God and immortality, then not only should we abandon Christian morality, but our morality should become the exact opposite. And he tells why. That's what we're looking at now. And that is what I think Tucker started to see. And when you see that, it stops being about Democrats and Republicans, and it starts being about something very much deeper than that. And I think that, you then have to contend with what is evil? Where what does that come from? How did we get here? Why are we saying these things? And that's one of the things I try to talk about on this show all the time. Now, when you're evil, when you're butchering children, when you're aborting infants, I'm not talking about fetuses, I'm talking about full-grown infants. When you're evil, you have to hide it. When you're evil, you have to lie to say you're not evil, because everybody knows what evil is. It's not relative. Evil is not relative. People are evil. They know it. When you have to lie to hide it, and when you lie, you have to force other people to believe the lie, and that's where we are right now. Look, Tucker is obviously, like all of us, a human being. He makes mistakes. He probably does things he shouldn't. We all do. He goes down wrong roads. But the people who are attacking him are the Agent Smiths of the Matrix. They're the enemy of American freedom, and they're the enemy of any kind of recognizable morality. Tucker's latest message, his last message that he sent out, was a post-firing message. And here's what he said. Cut 4.
Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them.
and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state. That's a depressing realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them. This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue, and so it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion. They're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail.
Now, I'm not sure how much I agree with that. I think true things sometimes prevail, but their lies can last for quite a long time, and we've seen that happen, and they can do quite a lot of damage. However, the one thing I have to say about that is that doesn't sound to me like a man who's thinking of retirement. And where Tucker goes next is going to tell us a lot about the state of the nation. Real talents, top broadcasting talents. And the one thing I know in life, it is a broadcasting talent. Top talents like Glenn Beck and Megyn Kelly left Fox. They are two of the top broadcast talents of the day. They left Fox and they established terrific outlets where they have large audiences and they make great money. But so far, they don't have the cultural power they had when they were on Fox. I mean, I'm just being honest about it. They're there, they do great work, they make good money, they have great audiences, but they still don't have the kind of power they could marshal when they were on cable networks. Now, I think that situation is temporary, and I'll tell you why. I think that Glenn Beck is a pioneer. Megyn Kelly is a pioneer. So saying that they don't have the cultural power they used to have is like saying, oh, you got on a wagon train and you trekked from New York to California. Now you don't have the influence that you had before because there's nobody in California. Well, people come, right? Things change. The cultural power is coming to the places where Megyn and Glenn and us and now Tucker, I'm sure, are going. And that's why the power that be, the Matrix, has made sure to co-opt Google. That's why the Matrix uses YouTube to silence anybody and demonetize us. That's why they hate Elon Musk for not playing along over at Twitter. The cultural power of free men and women is growing. It is. There's no question about this. They wouldn't be so scared. Tucker's right about this. They would not be so scared if that weren't the case. So look, personally, I hope Tucker joins us here. I hope he becomes part of the Daily Wire. I haven't heard anything about that, and I don't know if that's going to be true. I mean, I think the Daily Wire, Glenn Beck over at The Blaze, Megyn Kelly, I think we are the outposts of Zion. We really are. We're not always right. We don't always get all the facts, but at least we are trying our best to tell you what we see, all right? And Tucker Carlson, I suspect, is about to become one of us. He was fired because he saw the bigger truth, the big truth of the Matrix. But he's not the only one. And people will follow him, and this movement is going to grow. For more great content, like and subscribe, and also subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.